My name is Nick Douglas, and I'm a professional commentator for documentary films. Documentarians call me when they need somebody to fill in the blanks, to get from one point to another, when they need me to glue something together. And in the industry, I'm what's known as a glue man.
He's the best in the business. Just the other day, I was working on a documentary about Winston Churchill, and I needed to get from Churchill's penchant for cigar smoking to his role in the Dresden bombings.
Churchill was never seen anywhere without his cigar, which his wife Clementine thought was just criminal. Of course, during the 1945 Dresden bombings, he was being called a war criminal. Well, I started when I was about 16 years old. As luck would have it, there was a neighbor who turned out to be a murderer, and they came by for an interview, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. He was a normal guy, just a good neighbor, and you never expect anything like this from Gus. Then 2 weeks later, there's a citywide blackout. They needed somebody to go on record, they needed a soundbite, and they remembered me from the murderer story, and they interviewed me for that. And it just avalanched after that. I was their man on the street. Every time there was a record-breaking snowstorm, like a trampling death on Black Friday, or it's Groundhog's Day, I was their go-to guy. Then one day I get a call from one of these marketing companies that produces commercials for movies where they capture people's reactions who've just come out from the movie. Well, I don't go to movies very often, but they must have seen my work on Channel 6, they liked it. So for 3 years, I'm the guy reacting to movies. The best movie I've seen all year. I mean, there's no other word for it. This movie was a blast. We dig Digstown! And that's how I became the glue man.
I was there for his very first job. I was directing a documentary on Woodstock or Kent State or something 60s related. And he comes in, cool as a cucumber, sits down, and knocks the interview out of the park.
The sexual revolution was in full swing. The Vietnam War was over. I mean, America needed to blow off some steam. It was, stop everybody, what's that sound? It was Woodstock. Woodstock can all be summed up by this: sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Just the essentials.
We all knew that we were in the presence of a great talent.
He's a godsend for me. I mean, I'm an editor, so anytime I need just a short, generic soundbite, he's my go-to guy. And I actually set up, I call it my Nick bin, and it's all Nick soundbites. I can just pop them in anywhere.
It's just wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. It's like, Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore. And we weren't. It's like, hello, is anybody listening? Yeah, America's listening.
Oh yeah, I call Nick whenever I'm doing a documentary. It doesn't matter what it's about. Baseball, the Civil War, he's the guy who's just written a thick book on it. I don't think Nick's ever written a book in his life, let alone some 600-page doorstop about Lincoln. But when I need an expert, he's Nicholas Douglas, author, the great emancipator. I mean, nobody checks these things.
When you've been doing this as long as I have, you come up with little tricks that help you in the job. For example, whenever I'm at a loss for words, and it happens more often than you'd think, I'll just insert the phrase, cultural touchstone of our generation. John Stockton was a selfless player, but he would become a cultural touchstone for our generation. It was Pac-Man this and Pac-Man that. It would become a cultural touchstone for our generation. I'm not saying Studio 54 was a cultural touchstone for our generation. What I am saying is if you were alive in the late 70s, you had to be there. What does that mean? I don't know. It sounds smart.
His specialty, his absolute specialty, is the music cue. He's the guy we know is going to deliver us into the perfect music cue for the stock footage.
It was wild. It was unhinged. It was the 60s.
In a white room with black curtains.
He could lead us into music cues that are ironic.
It was a bleak time for America, and things would only get bleaker.
And I think to myself, what a wonderful...
He could lead us into music cues that are playful.
It was the 1950s. It was Ozzie and Harriet and Lucy and people sleeping in separate beds, but behind closed doors, things were pretty wild.
He can even lead us into music cues that don't make any sense.
Of course, by then, Hitler had already decided that Poland was next, and there was no turning back.
He's what I like to call a professional expert. He's better than the real thing, because if you listen to him closely, which most people don't, it's impossible to tell that he's just spouting nonsense.
In the pantheon of all of transportation, the choo-choo train was what the bread slicer was for the baking industry. I mean, it was the Great Depression and Pearl Harbor on acid. He was America's hillbilly. I mean, nobody stole America's heart like Snuffy Smith.
There is this legendary Glue Man story. I actually saw the raw footage years ago, but it was April Fool's and they wanted to prank him. So they brought him into the studio and they told him that they were making a documentary about the color blue.
Okay, is on the blues?
No, the
Got
color
it.
blue.
Oh, the color blue. Okay, it's a new one. You rolling?
And they told him that he had to take a strong stance on the color blue.
You've got Navy, you've got powder, you've got Royal. I mean, talk about a switch hitter. Blue's got it all.
I mean, he must have rambled on for what was like 10 minutes straight, I swear to God.
Everything you see, the sky, the sea, I mean, look around you, everything's blue. Blue was a cultural touchstone for our generation.
And then at one point, he even took an opposing view to the color blue.
And there's a reason they call it the blues. It's a color that makes people sad. Blue, it's like blah. You know, even the word blue, it's like very close to blah. The best thing that blue ever did was to mix with yellow. Of course, then it became green, which is a different all right. April Fools, you assholes. Got me. You got me.
I mean, it was just classic Glue Man.
This is the job I was born to do. My ex-wife probably put it best. She said, you could come up with a great soundbite about a relationship, but you couldn't keep one together to save your life. So hang on a sec. Hey, Raj. Oh, what's it on? Jonestown Massacre. Yeah, no problem at all. Be there in an hour. Okay, see you, Raj. Jonestown. Oldie but goodie. Where were we?